Have you ever been called a band geek, a theater nerd, cyber dork, studio rat, gamer punk, orchestra dork, book monkey, drama jock, Poindexter, artsy fartsy, or just plain weird? Well then, welcome to Art Nerds. This is the podcast where we sit down with our nerdy friends, embrace our inner geek, and celebrate our art. And welcome back, my friends. Welcome back to Art Nerds. This is the place where we talk with our nerdy friends about their art. I have got a friend of mine from the past few years here from Parkland. This is Alicia Buskirk. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
I am super stoked to have you on the show. Like I said, Alicia and I go, you were a student of mine, and now we have become friends. And tell us, Alicia, what is your art?
My art is fake pro wrestling.
Fake pro. So okay. I knew we were going to get into this. I didn't realize it was going to be the first question off the bat.
Yes.
You wholeheartedly admit it's fake.
Well, yeah. So my version, pro wrestling has some predetermined nature, and mine is a faker version of that. It is even less realistic than pro wrestling.
Oh, so is it all just for show then? Is it just... I
would say what I do is maybe 70% theater, 30% actual wrestling.
So there is some real wrestling involved.
There is some real wrestling involved. It is a physical activity. I've broken my thumb. I think when we first met, my thumb was broken from... Oh,
my stars, yes.
From doing a wrestling move poorly.
So how did you get into this?
Yeah, my passion. I love pro wrestling. I've always I've been a fan maybe 10 years or so. I find it super enjoyable. It combines everything I like about sports, theater, soap opera. I think it's just a really goofy and enjoyable product. And so when I came to Champaign, I saw there was Champaign Ladies Amateur Wrestling, or CLAW.
CLAW, yeah. Which we will put links to in the descriptors.
Yes. When I saw that CLAW was taking applications, I jumped on it because I was new to town. I already loved wrestling and it seemed really cool.
And you fit right in, right?
I did. I came right on, jumped into training, and immediately broke my thumb. So I had to sit out our first 2 shows, and then the pandemic happened.
Oh no.
And so we didn't do any shows for a while, but we've been recruiting in the last probably 6 months or so, and I've kind of become our de facto leader.
Okay, so is there a hierarchy? Is it that organized, like you're the president or something?
I am not. My title kind of changes on my mood. Sometimes I say I'm the organizer of CLAW captain. It really
the big claw.
I'm just the person who's willing to send emails.
Okay, so it's not that hard and fast in terms of organization.
Yeah, I send emails and my name is on the bank account because we do have a little bit of money.
Okay.
Not much, but we use it to buy supplies.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, now, let me get my nomenclature straight. Should I say it's a performance or should I say it's a wrestling match or...
We'll say the whole thing is a performance and we organize it by matches. So we'll say, Punky Bruiser had a match with Whammy Faye Baker.
Okay, so okay. So many questions on my stars.
Yes.
Okay. Now where was I going with this? So yeah, where do you perform then?
Generally in a normal year, we have shows anywhere between 2 to 5 times a year. As we're kind of getting back to our new normal, we're trying to figure out how often people have, time to perform, how comfortable people are in different settings. So last year we did a show at Urbana Pride Fest.
Okay.
And that was an outdoor show on Urbana's mobile stage, which was fun. So we were out in the middle of the street, kids running around, super fun.
Oh, that sounds like a blast.
Festival atmosphere. It was great. And Champaign Park District asked us to do this show, and so we'll be at Spalding Park. We're calling it Sparring at Spalding.
That's right. That's coming up here in June, right?
Yep, June 25th. So really, outdoor festivals are great for CLAW. We have done our own shows. Earlier iterations had more of a punk DIY aesthetic, and that really lent itself well to having CLAW shows at venues, at kind of concert venues, house shows. We've kind of morphed into more of a family-friendly entity. Kids love buying merch. So I don't want to go all Vince McMahon, but And kids just like even even real pro wrestling, kids love. It's very flamboyant. It's flashy.
Oh, sure. I mean, I remember as a kid, Saturday mornings, once the cartoons were over, the local stations ran wrestling matches.
It's perfect for children because especially American pro wrestling, a lot of it is just a morality play. It's good guy versus bad guy.
You're right, yeah.
And that really lends itself
And
well
that still
to kids.
plays out, even in the big arena kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
That's great. So, so did you grow up watching this kind of stuff, or?
It was around. I never really liked it as a kid. I actually fell into wrestling kind of ironically. It was on a streaming service, and I thought, like, this looks stupid. I'll put this on, and oh, wow. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. So elitist that I was, I just put it on for some to make fun of, really. And then I started watching, and they're doing real moves. They're telling sometimes basic, but sometimes engaging stories. You got these big personalities, and I really just fell in love with it.
Because my nephew is big into the wrestling scene, but he also likes I guess it's the Mexican version with the masks.
Oh, yeah. You got Lucha Libre.
Yeah, I don't know if that's any different or...
Man, if you like... Wrestling is perfect for nerds because it's a bit like comics in that you've got 100 years of history. You've got all kinds of different countries' versions. So like Mexican wrestling is a little more acrobatic. They're very into roles because originally Mexican wrestling took place in boxing rings. And boxing rings have very hard floors because if you're falling on the floor in a boxing match, you're done.
Okay.
And
right, sure.
And so with a boxing ring, it doesn't have a lot of give, and so they had to get used to rolling through moves so they don't just go splat and break their backs.
Pound themselves on there.
Mm-hmm. So that's a real world reason why they ended up developing this very specific style.
Oh, interesting.
It's pretty fun. British wrestling, it's catch as catch can wrestling, and it comes from kind of the more boxing, but also like bare knuckle fighting, the kind of things that like miners would get up to like in their spare time. And so that's where you get some of the British wrestling style that's evolved to this day.
So would you say the British style is a little more recreational as opposed to showy, or?
It's maybe a little more grappling focused. It's very like lots of holds, lots of submissions, and it's maybe a little bit more sports focused than ours.
Okay. Because as a kid, I remember seeing the Saturday morning stuff, and it was definitely the sprung floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you could hear it even through the television, like cruddy little 1970s television.
They usually mic the ring to get that extra effect.
Oh, do they really?
They do. a little extra showmanship.
A little sound effect. See, the more I know about it, the more it appeals to my sense of theater.
I'm telling you.
That's great. Yeah, so because the stuff I watched as a kid was always pretty showy. I mean, a lot. I mean, I guess it's American version of it.
American wrestling is very pageant based, so you have really big characters, kind of more of a spectacle. That's really where our style kind of shines here in the US. The thing is, like some of our, biggest exports of like, Macho Man Randy Savage,
right, yeah.
Hulk Hogan, bigger than life personalities.
Right. Because I've even seen like Andre the Giant wrestle just as a sheer. I wouldn't know if it's a story, but it's a very sideshowy.
Absolutely.
To a certain. I mean, when somebody like that wrestles.
Well, I mean, that's originally a lot of American basis for professional wrestling comes from carnivals. A lot of carnival language is actually still employed in wrestling. So fans aren't fans; they're marks.
Oh, really?
Yes. If you're a fan who kind of knows what's going on, you're a smart mark. Even though.
No, that sounds like gangster language where you're trying to get something out of those people, like money or something.
A little bit. Earlier wrestling was very rigged, and you get the marks in. You try and make them believe it's real, so they spend their money, maybe do a little betting.
Oh,
so it's very carny based.
It's all falling into place for me. It makes so much sense. This is great. So, again, you said you fell into it kind of ironically, just watching it on television in more recent years. So when there was this big like you said, the Hulk Hogan years and back in the late 80s and 90s, there was this, it was giant at a certain point in the public eye. Is that kind of when you started getting into it, or?
No, I started maybe 2012, 2013. So
Oh, wow, even more recent.
pretty recent. But nerd that I am, once I got into it. I had to find old pay-per-views, learn the history.
Yeah.
So I really, I'm not an expert, but I feel fairly knowledgeable about wrestling from the last 5 or 6 decades.
That's great. Yeah, because there was this big, just, I don't know if I want to call it a renaissance, but it turned into something crazy in the 80s.
There was popularity in the 50s, and it really, in the 80s, I don't know, just perfect cultural moment for those big beefy guys.
Yeah.
The kind of American versus foreigner stories. So you've got like American versus Soviet Union.
Oh, yeah.
American versus Iraq and Iran.
That's interesting because I'm looking at it too, and I'm thinking, that's like the MTV years where you're getting into video and you're getting into the visual of it, and then the 80s style was big and colorful and bold, and I think the wrestling world adapted that as well.
And the things that wrestlers have been doing forever, speaking to the crowd, worked so well for video. And what we call a promo, when the wrestler is generally hyping up for the next match. And once you learn the formula, you can never not notice it.
Never unsee it.
So it's like, hey, opponent's name, you said disparaging thing about me, but at venue, date, time, location, we're gonna fight. And opponent name, when we meet at venue, date, time, location, it's going down.
The perfect ad promo.
I mean, they're amazing at it, but the way they do it, they make you, until I really learned it, it never occurred to me. It was just so smooth. But, now I can notice okay, they're naming the place, they're naming the date. It's, it's kind of like a commercial or an ad.
Now, do you fear you're pulling back the curtain a little bit by letting people know, or is it?
That's a big debate. Some people really, there are things that even I choose not to know about wrestling. There are a few, for, real professional wrestlers, they have a certain number of kind of story beats that they have when doing a regular match, and they have their own kind of names. And that's something for me, I've kind of chosen not to dig too deeply into, because I don't want to have it just totally dissected. I like being a smart mark. I like having a little bit of knowledge, but then a little suspension of disbelief.
Still being able to enjoy it on that level. Okay. Yeah, it's like being too deep into, like being a theater director.
Absolutely.
I can see too much.
I mean,
because I've done it too much.
Because once you notice a thing, it's really hard to not notice. One of my favorites, and spoils for a lot of people, whenever a wrestler sets at a table, I always thought of this as kind of a dramatic irony thing. So you're a wrestler, you set up a big folding table, and you want to put me through it. Basically, if you sit at the table, you are always going through it. And I kind of thought, I'm like, oh, that's like a dramatic, oh, look at this guy. He's trying to set up a big prop, and he's actually the one who falls through it. The reason is because he's going through it, he needs to make sure it's safe, and he can actually check the table, set up his prop, and make sure it's in working order because he's the one going through it.
So he's playing stunt coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was, for me, as lifting back the curtain a little bit, because it was something I'd already noticed, but I didn't know that was the reason why.
Oh, so he's just double checking it to make sure it's gonna.
So it's not like a story thing.
It's gonna perform well.
Yeah,
that's.
I thought it was like a story thing, and it's actually a very practical safety thing.
Oh, okay. Now that also, there's this term in theater called Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
Yes.
Yeah. So is the table being set up kind of the same thing?
Absolutely. If a table is set up, people will be very cross if no one goes through it.
So like folding chairs.
Yes. Basically, once something is revealed, it's definitely going to be used. Or if you're paying attention, if commentary mentions something, it's going to happen. Now you get, especially with TV wrestling, you get commentary saying, oh, we'll make sure if we have to, we'll go past broadcast time. That means they will probably go past broadcast time.
Wow.
Or if they mention, no one in the history of the Royal Rumble has won it from this spot. Well, probably.
Somebody.
Because it's giving you that little bit of history. So when that does happen, you say, oh, wow, no one from... Yeah.
And the crowd goes wild.
It's like, what a great feat. No one from blah, blah, blah has done it from this spot. It's like giving you that little bit of history so you feel informed.
And then you feel cool for being there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a mark.
You're a mark.
Oh, that's marvelous.
I'm a total mark.
That's marvelous. Now, do you have commentators at your?
Yes, since I've been more of an organizer, I tell people I don't have the capacity to plan things and also wrestle. I'm already stressed about making sure the trains run on time, much less like breaking my thumb again. But I still like performing and I like speaking, and so I do commentary for Claw, which is great because I know the moves. A lot of members of Claw aren't into wrestling.
Really?
Could not care less.
So why do they do it?
I'm not totally sure. I think it's people who have a performing backgrounds and who like the idea of just being kind of in a community organization. And so I would say maybe 50-50 right now. 50% love wrestling and 50% have never watched a minute of it in their lives.
But they're out there.
But they're out there doing wrestling moves.
Now, so then is it? See, this for me is the interesting part. Why? Why? What goes through your head? If you have no idea about, no interest in watching it, or even, but yet you're out there.
I like to think we're good marketers. A lot of people who don't like watching but still joined are people who did see us perform at a festival, at a park, and thought like, "Hey, that looks really cool. I want to try it." So even though they don't have that basis, they just saw something that looks cool, and I mean that's pure.
Okay. Yeah, I won't. I'll give you that one. Now, is it also the physicality of it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure, because I couldn't do it. The way I'm built, my age, and that kind of thing. There's no way.
Yeah, this is definitely where the fake pro wrestling comes into play. I am friends with real pro wrestlers, and they do real training. The kind of things you need to do, the kind of feats you need to perform before you're even accepted in wrestling school. Some of the tests, are 100 burpees, 50 pull-ups, like 100 push-ups, 300 jumping jacks, and doing those back to back to back to back. Those are things that I am not. So we are, much more relaxed. We want everyone to feel safe, and so the moves, we do real wrestling moves. Sometimes they're a bit toned down.
Okay.
But we've kind of find something that works with the person. So if they've got a bum knee, we don't want to have them do a move where they're going to land on their knees, or if they're afraid of falling backwards, because in wrestling you take a lot of they're called bumps. Anytime you take a move, you're taking a bump, and wrestlers take a lot of back bumps. They end up flat on their back. It's like a trust fall where no one catches you. I don't like back bumps. I don't like just falling straight back to the ground.
Okay. Do you perform in a sprung ring kind of thing? Do you have that thing?
We do not. We perform on, I would say, maybe 2-inch gymnastics mats.
Okay.
And so we just have a stage. We can basically perform anywhere, which is nice as long as we have space. And we're doing these moves on just foam mats, which do not provide a lot of bounce back.
So back to our Mexican cousins, doing a lot of rolls and that kind of technique.
We do. Every new wrestler, we go through safe fall training. So I actually learned how to do this in self-defense class. It's you learn how to take a fall safely. Right. Where you're not landing on your arm, you're not hitting your head first. And so with every new wrestler, we go through the safe fall training and just teaching them, you fall on your back, you fall on the meat of your back, or if you're taking a side fall, you fall kind of on the meat of your hip. You make sure
your upper leg and hip, right?
Your arm's not underneath you. And so we go through that, and that's kind of when we get a feel for what someone's comfortable with. We teach a lot of rolls. I'm also terrible at rolls. I apparently never did like somersaults as a kid. So we do little somersaults, we do forward rolls, we do backwards rolls. But learning those, you kind of get that instinct where at the end of a move, rather than going splat, again, you can roll through
roll out of it. And
so much better.
It sounds akin to gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds akin to, I haven't had a lot of it, but it does sound similar to stunt training, which I would say is probably its closest cousin. It's akin to dance. I mean, in terms of the physicality and the performability of it. Now, do you think those reasons might be some of the reasons some people get into it?
I think absolutely.
Without being a big fan of the pro wrestling circuit?
Just thinking right now, we have performers with backgrounds in dance, backgrounds in gymnastics, backgrounds in cheer. And
Oh, sure.
One was a soccer goalie who is very at home throwing herself on the ground. I mean, she took a side bump, and I'm like, oh, that's classic like soccer keeper. That totally makes sense.
Oh, that does make sense.
She's just woof. So yeah, I think people with those backgrounds work perfectly in Claw. And we have people with martial arts backgrounds, and sometimes it's hard for them because they have to learn how to do things maybe a little simpler.
Do they have to unlearn? That was my next question. Do people have to unlearn techniques for Claw?
Yeah, I think
wrestling?
occasionally, especially if you have a martial arts background. There are some things that are very applicable. They do a lot of safe fall kind of training. But yeah, there are some things with, okay, you have to maybe take a step back because your opponent is not on that level.
Yeah, don't take him out yet. Yeah, you got 5 minutes.
Yes. There's a wrestler, Mick Foley. He tells a story about, seeing the wrestler Terry Funk. And he's like, man, Terry Funk throws these amazing, like, fake punches. Because in wrestling, most promotions ban punches because it's hard to throw a good fake punch.
Right.
You have to really pull back at the end. Like, it's not easy. And so he saw Terry Funk throw these amazing punches. And he's like, man, I got to learn how he does this. And finally, he has a match with the Funker. And Terry just hits him full on in the face. All those years, he wasn't throwing worked punches. He was throwing real punches.
I was going to say, because throwing a fake punch is not easy.
No, and that's why, with, again, that funny level of practicality in wrestling promotions, closed fists are banned because that's actually dangerous and that's not like good wrestling. It's really because it doesn't look good. And so they get around it by having, an official rule, but really it's just hard to do. And so they'd rather people not do it because it looks fake.
Oh my God, I love this so much. I can't. Why haven't I been watching wrestling all my life?
I'm telling you.
No kidding. Yeah, and also because throwing a punch in theater is tough, but we also have the advantage of our audience being in one spot. Now, do you guys perform with audience on all 4 sides, all the way around?
We generally do, or we have at least 3 sides.
Okay.
And Claw is weird because we perform with a band.
Keep going.
Yeah. Again, we're not exceptional wrestlers, and so there are moments of downtime where it might be kind of boring to watch. And so we have a live band who is playing generic punk music the entire time.
That's amazing.
It gets the wrestlers pumped, it gets the audience pumped, it keeps the energy up, and it just adds that little something, that
little bit of grit or something. Yeah. That's what a grand idea.
So that is not a normal aspect of wrestling, but I think for what we do, it works perfectly.
I think it should be. I think that's brilliant. And okay, I have to go to this next. You're sparring at Spalding. I have to go to your next club match.
Please.
I have to. That's fun. Okay. You said a minute ago wrestling school.
Yes.
It's like anime. There's always a school for it, but there's a school for wrestling.
There is. There are many. Some are more reputable than others.
Naturally.
So the best schools in the country are ones that are run directly by people who generally were on TV promotions. And so former WWE wrestlers, former WWF wrestlers, former WCW. So that's kind of the American system where you have, you train at a school. And that's a great source of income for some of these wrestlers. Wrestling is a high impact, very concussion heavy sport. A lot of these people, are done by their mid 40s. Their bodies cannot take it. And so coaching is a great way for them to keep an income and kind of teach that new generation, and also pass on the lessons of like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do, a leg drop every night of your life for your career because it ruins your hips.
Sure.
Or, this is a way you can do this safer. And so those are the best wrestling schools. You've got kind of lower tier where it's like maybe someone who is friends with a person who is on, on TV. And then it goes all the way down to, someone who's got a ring in their backyard and is charging guys, $50 to use it. But there are a few good ones around. My friend, he teaches at one in Springfield. It's Pinfall Wrestling Association. And I know he does a really good job.
Okay.
And people, they sign up and they do a lot of it's physical conditioning. Because, a real wrestling match, it may go 30 or 40 minutes. And that's 30 or 40 minutes of performing at a pretty high,
I'm gonna say that's
athletic level.
Yeah, that's close to circus in terms of some of the physicality and the
What you might like is again, there's all these fun international in the Japanese system. It's dojo based, and so if you want to wrestle for, say, New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is the country's biggest wrestling promotion, when you're 18 years old, you apply to go to the dojo, and if you get accepted, you move to the dojo, you live there, you work there full time. They put you to work, and so when you're training, you set up the wrestling ring for the real wrestlers. You, the older guys. So it's like you've got the older, in New Japan, they call them the New Japan dads. So you've got the wrestlers who are in their 50s and 60s who have been there their whole lives. You might have to, scrub their back at the sauna. You carry their bags. But through that system, you spend years training, not having to worry about having a job, having to work. You do nothing but train and learn pro wrestling. And when you kind of debut, I mean, you've got 5 or 6 years of support behind you.
That's amazing.
It's wild. And what they specifically do is right before, basically when their wrestlers are ready, they're finished from the dojo, they send them away. And they spend up to a year, 2 years on excursion in another promotion, sometimes in a different country. So they might be in Mexico for a year, or the UK for a year, or the US, where they're learning an entirely new style, working on character, and then when they come back, they're ready to go.
It sounds like they take it a lot more seriously.
It's incredibly serious. And it's, it's much more restrictive because if you're not an 18-year-old fresh high school graduate, then it is harder to kind of get started. And so I think that's where our system is a little more open. You have people that started later. You've got some people like Diamond Dallas Page. He didn't start wrestling until he was in his 30s, but ended up becoming a very popular figure, really well loved. He probably couldn't have done that in the Japanese system.
Yeah, that's interesting. And again, I don't know if I ever could have done. I mean, because I'm thinking about what I've seen and what you're telling me. Physically, it sounds tough.
It's incredibly demanding. You're doing a ton of aerobic activity, but also, I mean, a lot of moves, you're trying to make it as easy as you can. So if it looks like someone's lifting another person, the other person's probably giving them a little jump, but you're manipulating someone else's body, often in the air, bringing them down safely. It's a lot of work.
And then still acting like you're trying to not, bust them in half. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
It's pretty wild. I really love it.
Okay. So in terms of yourself, okay, I have a little, I wrote down a little note. Is it akin to like Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling, or is it something completely different? Is there a blend somewhere?
Yeah, every style is different. There are some things that are common across all types of wrestling. So there's certain things like having someone in a knuckle lock or an elbow and shoulder, collar and elbow tie up. There's some things that are fairly similar between it's real wrestling and fake wrestling. So, Greco-Roman folk style, and different countries, again, that have that difference. They may favor one or the other.
Okay.
A lot of pro wrestlers are former high school wrestlers and college wrestlers. So you get people with that kind of background. It's more that you just don't get points during the match. It's more show based. So in a real wrestling match where you may get points or you may have some certain outcome, that doesn't necessarily happen in pro wrestling, but you have some of the same moves.
Okay. Yeah, so it bleeds over. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, earlier when we were talking, you spit out a few character names, or I guess character is the right word, or...
Yeah, we kind of, we'll call ourselves wrestlers, characters, kind of interchangeable.
Again, I apologize if I'm insulting, because this is those are my terms I know from my field. Mm-hmm. So do you have one?
Yes, my character is a cashier, because I've spent many years of my life working in a grocery store, and I'm the Midwest Midnight Checkout Queen.
Oh, brilliant. Say that again, the Midwest.
Yep, I'm the Midwest Midnight Checkout Queen, or Checkout Queen for short.
The check. So now, how much of your persona is Is it just a name? Is it just a costume? Or are there like personality quirks that show up? Please, please, please.
Everyone kind of takes it to a different level. So mine's fairly light because again, I don't do a ton of wrestling, but I will be in character as, doing commentary. But I'll bring a bag of groceries to the ring. During promo photo shoots, I might like break a baguette over my knee. An early source of conflict. So we have a character. She's your mom.
That's it. Just your mom.
Your mom. And so she'll come to the ring complaining that the other wrestler took her Tupperware and never brought it back. Or
stars. That's great.
And so in an early show, your mom and I got into an argument because she kept trying to use expired coupons in my checkout line, and I didn't like that. So she had to call for the manager.
And that was you?
And she called the manager on me. And so that was our source of conflict. And we're going to fight, Mom. I'm sick of you disrespecting me at the checkout line.
Oh, that's so, it sounds like, and again, this is just me learning about this. It sounds like old Commedia style performance where there's just this real rough scenario behind the, dare I say, script?
Yeah, absolutely. We try and, because our main, again, kind of back to boring practicality, my main concern is safety. So I want to pair a more experienced wrestler with a less experienced one. I don't want two newbies fighting. And so, it's fun when character ideas really work out, but my goal is for someone experienced to work with someone less experienced. And then whatever story they can figure out from there, perfect.
Whatever, any loose hook will work.
Mm-hmm. Because with real wrestling, there's not always a reason. Sometimes the guys are just fighting because the promotion said, "Hey, fight."
Okay.
And so it's fun. Right now, we have a new character, and her idea is Moist Owlette.
Okay, explain.
Yes, she's an owl character, and I guess she's moist. We haven't established much further. She has a move called the wet nap. So she's a newbie, and perfectly we were able to pair her up with a slightly more experienced wrestler who is Attila the Hen, and we're gonna have we have a bird fight.
A little Mexican rooster kind of.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
So if something works out like that, perfect. If not, we can make it work.
That's funny. I like the attitude behind it. It's just, it's not, it's, the performative aspect is very lighthearted and just based on silly fun, whereas the physical performative of it is very carefully, I won't say scripted, that's not right, but I would say monitored.
Absolutely. And that's the goal for in real wrestling as in ours. You have the ref who's that third person, and they're kind of there to make sure things are going to plan. So obviously they play the role of person who ends the match and, enforces the rules. But if someone gets a concussion, they're there to say hey, we need to go ahead and stop the match. We're going to move on. And so having that third person to kind of monitor the situation is ideal.
And that's something I would never have suspected as a kid, that ref is part of the team.
Yeah. And again, kind of breaking that suspension, especially in modern wrestling, every ref has a little earpiece. And so they're getting information from the back, even just mundane things like, oh, the TV commercial went long and the match 2 minutes early. And so they're able to communicate that to the performers. Or, again, in case of injury, so-and-so broke this, let's get the doctor out here, let's get someone else to stall. So, it's a great amount of information that gets exchanged between the ref and the people in production.
Yeah, so you've got kind of like a floor manager of sorts.
Absolutely.
Stage manager of sorts.
For us, we're a little low tech, but just having that third person to really make sure things are being safe.
Right, but it's a safety valve of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
And they're a character, which is fun too. It's just a third person to be up there and.
Right. Is the ref then part of the conflict, as it were, or is that person there just to stay kind of neutral and keep an eye on things?
Yeah, you really get a wide variety in Claw as well as just wrestling in general. The kind of fun thing is a lot of refs have sort of their own character. Maybe one is a real hard ass about enforcing the rules. Maybe one kind of turns a blind eye as long as the match is going well. And so you kind of get like, if I'm watching an AEW match and I see like Rick Knox is officiating, I say, oh, he's gonna favor the Young Bucks in this one.
Okay.
And so they have their own kind of characters. In Claw, we've got former wrestler the Thigh Master, who referees. And she's a little ditzy and kind of a little, doesn't quite pay attention. And so it's maybe easier to get something over on her than another ref.
But then that still becomes part of the performance.
Mm-hmm.
And the audience picks up on that third character.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's genius.
You don't want them to take kind of eyes away from the wrestlers, but to kind of supplement and make the performance even better.
Right. It's your background characters that can shift a little bit.
And one thing that really stuck out to me was someone was explaining the wrestler is the audience, or the referee is the audience surrogate. And so seeing the reaction of the referee, because I mean, they're human. They see a nasty hit, they go, oh, and they kind of make a little face, and they're really letting you know like how you should be reacting to this match. And so they're modeling.
That's interesting.
They're modeling the reaction they want you to have.
Is that fairly common practice then?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, it's really interesting. So if you watch a ref's face, I mean, there are some that are maybe a little more stone-faced than others, but there are some that, the way they react is the way that you should be reacting.
So they're the grounding agent of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Oh my gosh, that's so.
They think of everything.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would imagine so after you do it for so many decades, but I always just as a kid, you're always fighting with your friends. No, it's real. No, it's not. No, it's real. No,
yeah,
it's not.
I just saw him go through a table. Of course it's real.
Yeah, like, of course it's real. You've seen that guy with the blood.
Mm-hmm.
And then you read something like, oh, yeah, they got little blood pills or what have you.
Ooh, yeah. Blood is a pretty touchy subject lately. It was kind of moved away from the product in the last 20 years or so. Some promotions are kind of getting back into it. But they really cut themselves. That's actually, for some promotions, the ref will hand the wrestler a little razor blade and they will cut themselves along the hairline to get some of that blood flow for maybe a really gory match.
Ooh.
It's nasty.
Oh, yuck.
So that one, it's someone's really cutting themselves, so it's their blood, but it's not not quite real.
Blech.
Yeah, Claw's blood free. Well, we have fake blood sometimes.
Okay, and what kind of scenario would you put the fake blood in? This is the stuff that fascinates me.
Yes, this is a little before my time. I just heard we had to stop doing fake blood because it was hell to clean out of the mats. We've gotten beer on the mats. We used to have a wrestler. She was Stone Cold Jane Austen.
Oh, great!
And if you know anything about Stone Cold Steve Austin, he
right.
cranks the beer, and yeah, so she would come out in her little cut-off jeans, like the Stone Cold shirt, and then a bonnet.
just to make the identification.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're very prop. Claw loves props. We have some characters that every match, maybe the corn stalker is throwing popcorn in the audience. Attila the Hen, she's amazing. She does 3D printing, and so she 3D printed some eggs that she could lay onto her opponents and then break open, and they were full of slime.
And then you're chucking food at people and busting baguettes over heads.
Anytime we can have, an element of performance that's not adding any danger, we take it. If it adds spectacle and keeps everyone safe, we are down.
It sounds like you take a lot more fun in the big flashy part of it. Because and again, this is going back to stuff I've seen as a kid and my friends. Some people really are into the physical wrestling, the physicality. The Claw, your group sounds a lot more playful.
Yes, if you are a grappling purist, you probably won't enjoy Claw. We definitely try and keep it. Because again, a lot of our members don't know or care about wrestling. They know but they know when something looks good and looks big and flashy, and they go for it. And they have that performance knowledge, maybe not wrestling knowledge.
But they enjoy the spectacle of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
I mean, to get those crowd reactions, it feels good. And especially when you see, when you see something live, it really lowers the barrier that you have to hit. If I'm watching something on TV and maybe someone just does a simple suplex, it looks good. Like, oh, that's cool. If you see it in real life, 10 feet in front of you, it looks awesome. Like, it looks really cool.
The live show's always better.
Yeah. And so we don't have to break our heads to really get good crowd reactions. We can do some basic, safe as they can be moves, and the crowd enjoys it.
And it's fun.
It's fun. Yeah. It's fun to go flying through the air. I did tweak my neck recently on a judo throw. That wasn't fun. It hurt my pride more than my neck, I think.
Okay, good. As long as you're fine. Okay, last few questions here. Mm-hmm. What about this turned you on? I mean, why? I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I use the phrase, what turned you on about this?
I think for one, just the communal nature of Claw, having this group where we're all doing this, we're planning it. We don't have to plan it. We don't get a lot of us spend money to do this. So there's this aspect of we're choosing to take part in this activity. And then when we actually do it, you're in front of this crowd, you've got people kind of oohing and awing when you do really cool moves. It's a really interesting way to perform. It's local theater, but through the lens of pro wrestling, which for me is perfect.
But so is it the performance that turns you on? Is it the physics? Is it the athleticism that turns you on? Is it the combination?
I think it's the combination. I think the planning and then the success of just like, we're getting together, we're putting this thing together, and then it's actually happening. We're doing it. It's so great. Because again, I do a lot of the planning.
Right.
And so for me, getting that release of like, I've spent months getting this together. Oh my God, this is so great. And now it's done. And then it's kind of, for me, it's like camping. It's like, by the time I've forgotten how hard it was to do like the last camping trip, I'm ready to do another one. Okay. So it's like, by the time I've forgotten how much I struggled to plan this show, I'm ready to plan the next one.
Okay. Is there anything about it that turned you off?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm definitely the worst wrestler in Claw. I'm not. I think I've racked up the most injuries.
So does that automatically make you the worst?
I think so. Yeah, for me, I was never a sporty kid. I was never did any kind of sports. Marching band was as close as I got to a sport. So I like the performance, but I desperately want to be a wrestler, and I just really suck at it. And so I think being in that environment where I get to kind of act out and like have a little bit of that experience without having to do 1,000 burpees and jumping off the top rope.
I learn at your own pace kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. But for me, some of the physicality we mentioned earlier, I take terrible back bumps. I can't commit. I kind of like flail halfway through. Because again, you're falling from standing on your back to the floor.
Right.
It's a little scary.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I get scared a little easy.
Anxiety there. Yeah. I can see that. Another question. First of all, this is fascinating to me, this whole thing, and I can't thank you enough for telling me about it. I ask this question to everybody. Is there another art form that you don't participate in that you would think you would like to or want to somewhere down the line?
Oh, interesting. There are definitely things that are more, again, kind of more physical and performative in nature. Some martial arts. I was actually looking at the capoeira listing at the IMC, and I'm just like, ooh, dance and martial arts. I think there's just for me, there's a real element of physicality that I don't feel especially connected to my body. And so there have been times where I thought maybe looking into dance or something that I've never tried, maybe try and make that connection with movement in my own body.
Okay. Yeah. We had a guest on a few weeks ago. His name is Miles Norseworthy, and he's with the HEMA group, and it's all kind of antique sword fighting. And,
interesting.
And it's the same kind of thing. They just get out there and teach each other the right moves, and then they go at it. And that feels very similar. Yeah, and it feels like the way you talk about it, it's the same kind of impulse. there's a performative aspect, but there's a certain, it's a lot more below the neck in terms of the learning curve.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah. Is there another art form that you would never want to try?
Ooh, it's tough. I definitely have done a little bit of music. I've never tried dance, but I'd be curious about it. Probably anything like vocal singing. I like speaking. I like talking. I like recording.
You have a career in radio.
Yeah, I don't like singing. I mean, I like singing in the shower, but I think that level of putting myself out there is just, I don't want to experience it. I don't want that level of vulnerability of singing in my own voice in front of other people.
Now, I find that horribly contradicting.
I know.
In the sense that, number one, you make a living talking into a microphone. And number two, you're sitting there telling me about how I physically want to perform. But what scares you about singing?
I think there's just a level of vulnerability I would feel using, singing. Yeah, I think just singing, kind of putting my own voice out there. I can play an instrument and perform totally fine. I just couldn't sing. Okay. I couldn't tell you why, man.
That's okay.
Save that one for the therapist.
No, there's when I teach theater and playwriting, when I talk about character development, I always say there's one thing that seems super contradictory. You may never show up in the play, it may never show up in a script, but put in your head that there's a contradictory element somewhere in this character. I think I may have found yours.
I think so. Because it's funny, I'm the first advocate for voices. I like my own voice. I like listening.
You sound phenomenal.
I like listening to recordings myself. I tell other people when they're like, "Oh, I hate my voice," I'll try and tell them the positive things about their voices.
Right.
I don't want to sing. I don't want anyone to hear my singing voice. I don't want to hear my singing voice.
I mean, can you sing?
I don't think so.
We'll never know.
It's none of your business.
Any advice on anybody who wants to get into amateur wrestling?
Yeah.
Amateur pro, real fake wrestling.
Yeah, if you want to be a real wrestler, go to a wrestling school. We actually got, because, there's always the joke of like people like, oh, people don't know like pro wrestling is fake. And it's like, oh, it's real to me. There was a very sweet 18-year-old who wrote into our website. She talked about how much she wanted to be a wrestler. And I said, hey, and she lived, I think, in Taylorsville. And I said, hey, that's great. Here's a wrestling school that you should check out. You don't want to. If she were in town, I might have, said like, hey, come on and, play around with us. But if she really wants to be a wrestler and she's not super close, like, go to here's a name of my friends.
Here's Springfield, yeah.
Yeah, go check that out. But if you want to be a fake pro wrestler, just come on by. But I would say there are other promotions. I haven't found anything quite like Claw. There's something similar, but they're a bit more on the wrestling side. They're called Blow. And I think it's that's BLOWW. And they're in Boston. I totally can't remember. It's big. Oh, yeah, I cannot remember what their acronym is, but they do similar to what we do, but it's a little bit more wrestling focused.
Okay.
And so they do a more training, more traditional wrestling, and they wrestle in a ring. But if you want to, I'd say, get some friends, like kind of figure out what you want to do and just start making stuff. It's like any of this creative stuff, just start trying it. I mean, Claw started 5 or 6 years ago. It was just a group of friends that wanted to try something new and made a whole little thing.
And now you've got a community organization promoting wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, just try it. Just get some friends together and goop around.
Is that how you guys started? Is that how Claw started?
Yeah, so I wasn't there in the beginning, but it was literally just a group of friends who thought like, hey, let's put on like a fake pro wrestling group.
And it stuck. I love that. That's genius. Okay, I think this is, last question. Mm-hmm. Where can we see or where can we experience some of your art?
Yes, so if you want to check out our website, which is 217claw.com. You can also find us on Facebook.
I will dig out all the links.
Yes.
And put them in the descriptors.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, definitely check out our website. You can see some past wrestlers. There's some really great ones, but in there we've got the Slice. She's a 6-foot piece of pizza. We have I'll let you figure this one out. We had Virginia Dentata. I'll leave that one to your imagination.
Can we see you personally on this website somewhere?
I should be on there somewhere. We're in the process of doing a little revamp, so we should have some fresh wrestlers up there.
Okay.
And then check our shows. We're trying to have more of a social media and digital presence. That's kind of in the works. So hopefully you'll see more videos. But yeah, check out our website. You can find all of our stuff.
And you've got a show coming up this summer.
Yep.
And this will be out in the air well before that, so you can plan ahead.
Yeah, so we are at Champaign, so Spalding Park in Champaign, Illinois. It's June 25th. Should start at 1 p.m. and it'll be super fun. It's free. Should be family friendly. There'll be food trucks and activities.
Oh, that will be fun. And I love the logo. I'm going to put the logo in there. You'll see it if you visit the website. The claw logo is slightly genius, too.
They did a great job designing that.
Yeah, they did. Who did that?
It was one of our early members. I think she was a graphic designer.
Okay. Yeah, nicely done. So anyway, Alicia, thank you so much. I can't, this just tickles, this whole conversation just tickles me to no end. So
hey, I'll take any chance I can get to talk about wrestling.
Well, thank you. And man, maybe we can have you and more of your cohorts.
Yes,
do a
please.
bigger show later on down the line. Awesome.
Let's plan a watch party.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be great fun. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for hanging around and geeking out with us. If you enjoyed the show, hit the like and subscribe buttons. And more importantly, join the conversation and leave us a message or comment. We'd love to hear about your nerdy art. Thanks again, and join us next week for more Art Nerds.